The intention for the space is about disarming the ego. Being the only woman in an executive boardroom, I would have to make space for myself because no one else was going to do it. When you have such a clear vision, you don't let anything get in your way.
We were just talking. Okay, so I'm here with Cecilia. You're the co-founder of Ciel Creative Space, which is where we are in this podcast.
Yes.
It is the largest soundstage in Northern California. Is that right? Because it is enormous, right? And you gave a tour yesterday. We got to see all of the different spaces that are used for weddings and fashion shows, podcasts like this one, co-working spaces too.
Absolutely.
And, as we're walking through one of the hallways, you'd framed like a sketch of a marketing plan and the sort of the framework of the idea for Ciel Creative Space. So talk to us a little bit. All right, so we just learned you're a jazz singer.
Yes.
You're named after Cecilia of the Simon Garfunkel song.
Yes.
Right? So what is your inspiration? What was your inspiration for starting this creative space?
Yeah, so it really goes back to my early childhood. I was always hosting parties. I'm Filipina. So growing up in a Filipino household, there's tons of people around always. So at an early age, I learned how to host. I learned how to hold space. And because my parents are creatives, that's the community I helped foster. So in my early career, which was in fashion and advertising,
Directing, right?
Yes,
Weren't you
I
also
was
a director?
directing.
Yeah.
I was constantly in and out of all these different studios. And I would be working out of New York, LA, Chicago. And I just couldn't find a space in the Bay where I grew up that exuded that creative energy, that fire, that inspiration.
Right.
So I basically picked up all these different gems of these studio spaces and figured out that I should just make something with all the pieces that I loved within all the studios that I visited.
Yep.
And here it is.
So you kind of solved your own problem with this space. And it's, unless you're here and experience the space, it's hard to explain to people
It is.
the drama, right? Like, first of all, it's a warehouse,
It
right?
is.
Like from the outside, it's like, is this it?
Yeah.
Right? Like the Uber driver went around the block, but then you walk in and it's this vast space of multi-purpose uses, right?
Absolutely.
But the vibe when you walk in is that you are in somewhere very, very special. And you also get the vibe that this is for creatives.
It is.
And how does that work? Right? Like how do you find people to use this space? How do you market a space? Like how does the business side of what you do work?
Well, it's really all about word of mouth. So in my career, I've been in marketing and advertising. I network. So early on, when I first opened, it was just about spreading the word that this space existed.
Right.
So I reached out to a bunch of my Fortune 500 clients and partners that I had worked with and just said, hey, I'm trying out this thing. Why don't you come see if you want to shoot out of here, have an event, let me know how it goes. And they loved it. So because the intention for the space is about disarming the ego,
how does that work?
Well,
if you can disarm ego, you might have another business plan to execute on, right? How do you do that? Like, what does that even mean?
Okay, well, because I worked in advertising, there's a lot of egos in the room.
Yeah, I think so.
A lot of male energy.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only female in the room. And a lot of the communication styles came from people basically wanting to be seen and heard at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, with the intention of having people be seen and heard when they come through the space is really the foundation of the energy.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of what helps welcome people in. It helps disarm them.
Yeah. And I feel that, right? Like when I was walking through the space with you yesterday, and there's, it's like it's like a movie set, right? Like it's just like there's like a cafe vibe, then you've got
Yeah.
the atrium and these beautiful spaces and beautiful sound stages. And it's just, you can feel yourself kind of settling, right?
Mhm.
Like you want to create. And as we were walking through and you showed me the diagram you had created for this vision in
Yeah.
2018, and we started talking a little bit about your business partner. And this is hard for you. And so if you need to take a beat, we'll take a beat. But let's talk a little bit about, what happened to your business partner and how you made the decision to carry on and create Ciel.
I could get teary-eyed, but let me just take a sip
You
of
take
my
a sip of wine.
little bubbly.
Take a shot.
If that's
Yeah.
okay.
You do what you need to do.
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay.
Let's go there.
Are you ready? Because we don't have to.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. So, Alexey is an amazing character in my life and just in life. He is a big energy. So I met him in 2016, gave him this vision that I had that I wrote down on that sketch that you're talking about. And he wholeheartedly believed in it. He saw that I had a creative mind, but I also had this business savvy
Yeah.
entrepreneur energy that he was drawn to. And because of him, my vision went tenfold. So originally I was thinking of 2,500 square feet, and he exploded it into 25,000 square feet. And then now 55,000 square feet.
It's huge.
But in the early days, he really encouraged me to keep thinking outside the box. And he was the first person that held space for me.
Yeah. He was a champion, and he
Yes.
is a champion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was the first time I was being in the center of, what do you call it? The creative epicenter
Right.
of what this
He was
is.
lifting you up, right? Like he
Yes.
believed and still believes in you.
Yeah.
And the vision. And he's been a part of the whole process for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So 2018, we find the space, which is crazy because on the sketch, I had written June 2018. We signed for the space June 1st, 2018, which is wild. And then construction. It was fast and furious. Alexey worked with a bunch of different contractors to bring my vision to life. And then a month before our soft open, he was in a tragic, life-altering accident. So he was at Stinson Beach celebrating his son's birthday with other friends and family. And a bunch of the dads decided to go back into the water. They were boogie boarding right before blowing out the cake. And that's when it happened. He severed his neck and became quadriplegic. So I get a call from his best friend that evening, and I was celebrating my sister's baby shower. She was just about to give birth. And I remember getting that phone call and sitting down, and his best friend was like, "Are you ready for this?" And she basically was telling me, like, everything's going to be okay. We'll figure things out. And here I am seeing my sister about to give birth. I'm about to give birth to this business that we put millions of dollars into, and we're a month from opening. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
How are we going to make this happen? So I remember going to the hospital to visit him that evening, and he was in the worst condition. So you go down the trauma center, and it's the longest corridor. So he's at the very end in the biggest corner room because he's hooked up to all these different machines. And I walk up to the bed, and he can't move. And this is a guy that was just running around. He is super adventurous. He would snowboard down hills, go, helicopter skiing. That's a throwback to East Bay. And he was just super active. So to see him in that condition was crazy. So I looked at him in his eyes, and he looked at me, and he's like, Cecilia, I'm so sorry. That was the first thing he said. I'm like, Alexey, this is not your fault. Why are you saying sorry? He's like, I'm sorry that I couldn't make your dream happen. And I'm like, you are making my dream happen. It is happening. And he says, you have to just do this without me. And in that moment, I looked at him and I said, fuck no. Pardon my French. I said, fuck no. We're going to be doing this together. You're going to get through this. You helped my dream come to life. Let's go. We have to do this together. So in that moment.
Was that the moment where it was sort of like a turning point?
Yes.
Right? Like you decided not only to continue to execute on your vision, but you brought him with you. You continued to work together.
So this is when I knew that his mind was still intact.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know it at that moment because the accident just happened. But later we had found out that his spinal cord nerve was hanging on by a piece, like a hair.
Oh my God.
And literally the thickness of your one strand. And like one single movement could have broke it and he would have just been done. But for whatever reason, he was alive and well, and his brain was fine. He just couldn't move. And in that moment, he said, okay, if we're going to do this, I need you to. And then he had a list of things to do. Call the painter, call the carpenter,
right.
And I was like, wait, what? So I busted out my phone and I was like, all right, let's go. And, he still was able to give me a to-do list. I had never managed a construction crew in my life.
Right.
I was focused on the business. Building a team, doing the branding, doing the operations. I didn't know how to make a fucking space.
Right. Right.
But I learned quick. I now know how to build a house if you need me to. But I had to quickly jump into his role and my role a month before the soft open.
Oh my God.
And this is what's crazy. I don't know if you've ever worked with construction crews. It's a male-driven industry.
Yeah.
So to have a woman step in and be like, okay, guys, now I'm in charge.
Yeah.
It took a little bit to convince them.
Yeah. How did you do that?
Well, it just needed to get done.
Yeah. There was no choice.
Yeah. So I just went into boss mode. As a director, you just jump in and you get focused, right? So I just went into that mode and was like, we're going to get this done. This is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We were able to have our soft opening on time. On time.
That's amazing. And, the other thing yesterday when we were walking through the spaces, the Alexey, your business partner, his art is hanging throughout the spaces. And, so it's, he's very much a presence here, even though,
Absolutely.
he's not like wandering around. Like, you can feel the vibe of him throughout the halls. And we talked about that
Hmm.
yesterday.
His art exudes energy. I
Yeah.
believe all artists um, display their energy through their art. Like, you could feel it.
Yeah.
And Alexey's is exceptional.
Yeah.
So we're lucky to have his current art in our hallways.
Yeah.
So he had a rebirth after the accident and after a few years of recovery to get back into creating art.
Yeah.
And so he works with an assistant to create those big pieces that you saw in our hallways.
Yeah. Going through like that, first of all, being a woman and trying to stand up a business that is, largely real estate,
Yep.
right? And in a man's world. And, what are the lessons that you learned going through that? And then, suddenly having to take on an additional and new role, right? Like, what got you through that? What did you learn? Like, how did it change you and shape you, not only as a person, but as an entrepreneur?
Mhm. When you have such a clear vision, you don't let anything get in your
Yeah.
way, not even an accident.
Can you just stop right there for a second? Because what you just said is the single most important statement for any entrepreneur, or really any
Absolutely.
human. The clarity of what you are doing, your ability to articulate it in 3 sentences or less, is what's going to get you from success to success to success. If you don't have that clarity and it's mucky, you will fail. I have seen it a million times.
Mhm.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you just said it so beautifully. Like, the clarity of your vision is what carried you through.
It is. It's that sketch.
Yeah, the
that
sketch on the wall.
Yes.
Yep.
So if I didn't have a clear outline to create the vision, I wouldn't have a guiding sense of where
Yeah.
to go. But I knew, because I knew what had to be done first, second, third. And you don't necessarily need to know how. You just need to understand what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I actually don't like the word trying. You just do.
You just do.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're in San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes.
It is a very creative economy, creative culture. How did you, and, incubators, accelerators,
Yes.
co-working spaces, they're every other block, right? How did you differentiate what you do here versus the other spaces that are out there? It's a competitive market.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had to pivot quick. And I've always been one to have a very diverse revenue stream. So we do have co-working, but we also have photo and video production and space rental, as well as events. And then on top of that, we just have an outstanding community
Yeah.
that we heavily rely on.
Yep.
So it's a mix of all those different elements that makes us especially unique. And then the plants.
Right.
The plant life and
Yeah.
all the art really add a different energy to
Yeah.
the space.
Let's go back to, you were just talking about, we just sort of skimmed over it, but the idea of community.
Yeah.
Right? Did you have the community going in to executing this plan, or did you develop the community after the soft launch? Like, at what point did the community play a part of your business plan and your
Mhm.
business?
So the foundation of our community is the photo and film industry, because that is where I was from. And from that, we started creating outer circles. So then we got into a bunch of different co-working members that had these beautiful communities that they brought
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So that was the next ring in the circle. And then another ring is the events. So because we have hosted folks like Soho House, the National Speakers Association, the American Photographers Association, all these different groups
Yeah.
come here. and want to be part of this magic that we've created.
Yeah.
So that's really how it's all evolved.
Yeah. It's the magic part, right? That you can't predict
Yeah.
or create. It's one of those things that becomes, it's the essence usually of a leader, right? That creates the magic, but it's that the community who, really propagates the magic.
Yes.
But it is like the magic of successful entrepreneurship cannot be measured or taught. It just kind of exists in this realm, right? And you walk in here and it's magic, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the plants definitely help, and the artwork, but it's, and your community story, and, the stories that you guys tell of the people who have been here, there's ghosts here already,
Yes.
even though it's a very young space. It feels like there's, this energy here.
The intention of having this space was to find a building with soul.
Yeah.
So this building used to be a print manufacturing company.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of the windows and the floor have this blue ink that used to basically go up in the air, and that's what stained the space. So we have pieces of history in the walls and the windows, and then we have this new energy of the community.
Yeah.
So this is what's crazy. Because this building has been around since the 1940s, I have people in different generations come in and they're like, oh, I used to skateboard through this warehouse. Oh, my mom used to work in that office. And I'm like, whoa, that is insane.
Yeah.
To think of all the different iterations that this building was.
Yeah.
And I think that adds to Ciel.
Yeah. And the magic,
Yeah. So, this is always meant to be a proof of concept.
Yeah.
So, we're looking to potentially expand into other cities and find similar buildings.
Yeah.
That what we have that urban acupuncture.
Yeah.
So Alexey introduced me to this philosophy called urban acupuncture, and it's around understanding the socioeconomics within a neighborhood to really get a sense of what that energy is and to help release any tension to help the neighborhood flow.
Yeah.
So, for example, this neighborhood is surrounded by architects. We have bakers and chefs. We have musicians down that way and artists across the street. And what this neighborhood needed was a creative hub.
Yeah.
So that's what we built.
How will you, in the next, I don't know, I mean, it sounds so basic to ask this question, but how will you measure your success? What is the sign you are looking for that you've hit a mark and you're going to move to the next one? How do you measure success in this business?
It's interesting that you asked that, because I was literally thinking about this the other day. It isn't necessarily monetary, although, of course, all business is about money. It's really about the impact that we have on the community, the local economy, and creating legacy within the different industries that we impact.
Yeah. How do you, and I agree, right? I think having impact that lasts, and even impacting one person with the work you have created, is worthwhile, right? Yeah. But how do you measure impact? Like, is it an economic number, right? Yeah. Like, how do you measure that? I mean, you can feel it, right? Yeah. But feel is not a great barometer of a measurement. So, you tell me.
Well, so the way that we currently measure success is through repeat clients. So people that keep wanting more.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we do it numerically. And in terms of understanding what the client needs, that's where we get those testimonials to understand if we can create a better space for them. So really it is around making sure that we are providing what the community needs, and then making sure that they keep coming back for more.
Yeah. And what is your, like your advice to you? I interviewed a tattoo artist a little bit ago, right? And he's a creator of art,
Yeah.
and he makes murals, and he has a very different vantage point than you do. But what is your advice to, creative entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in the creative economies? How do you inspire greatness, right? What are your words of advice for those kind of entrepreneurs who are chasing an emotion, right?
Yes. My advice is to be that rebel,
Yeah.
to really disrupt in your own way and to think of the collective good.
Yeah.
So if you're able to revolutionize whatever it is that you create in an impactful way for the majority, I think then you can do anything.
And, as we're concluding here, thank you, first of all, for being so open. And I know that was painful to walk through some of those memories, but, like, I'm just going to fucking put it out there. Okay.
Please.
Let's talk about women for a second.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Like, let's just transition to the good stuff here. Like, let's talk about the challenges. Like, we can talk about your success and, how you made pivots and how you, dusted off some things to close the deal on Ciel. Let's talk about the challenges you have had as a woman in leadership.
Early on, I've always had this idea that I was going to use my voice for good.
Yeah.
And it's been difficult because I do have vocal nodules and I had to find other ways to communicate.
Yeah.
So I started doing that through storytelling and visuals. And being the only woman in an executive boardroom, I would have to make space for myself because no one else was going to do it.
Right.
And I had some unique ideas that I would have to just say for my own peace in front of people that might not have wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
And it had got me to where I am now. It's been a very long road to earn that respect. And a lot of the times in this industry, it is a male-dominated industry. A lot of creative spaces are owned by large enterprises or private equity firms. Yeah. So it is one of those. I'm very proud to be a woman-owned business and a minority at that.
Yeah. I'm very proud too. And I think that your story is not just one of, a successful badass businesswoman, but, you have overcome a lot of odds, right? That males in the industry have not had to overcome. What is your advice for female entrepreneurs who might be facing similar challenges? And that your story of finding your voice, right? Like that is really powerful because some of the greatest leaders in history never spoke.
Yeah.
Right? Like you learn to use your voice in ways that have nothing to do with the spoken word, right? And storytelling doesn't have to be spoken, right? And so anyway, like I'm so inspired by your story and your openness, but like you're in this position. So what advice do you have for women out there?
This is something that I learned just recently because I felt alone as I was building this space.
Yeah.
It really helps to find a mentor.
Yeah.
And to have that person that you can speak to that has gone through something similar that can help guide you and just be a sounding board. It is so important to be able to just speak openly and with someone that has that expertise.
Yeah. And how do you, like, I get the mentor question a lot, right? Like, where do you find a mentor, and it's like, that's not 1-800, mentor. There are mentors all around us every single day. Sometimes all you have to do is ask,
Yeah.
right? A mentor can be anyone. It doesn't have to be someone with a certificate of mentorship or whatever, I don't know if that's a real thing. But how do you suggest people find a mentor?
Yeah, there's a lot of great women-led organizations out there.
Yeah.
So I'm part of the Women's Presidents Organization, which are a bunch of amazing women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that is how I found my mentor. But there are a lot of resources out there.
Yeah. And you don't ever have to feel alone, right? If you do feel alone in your leadership and what you're doing, that's choice, because there are a lot of women out there who have had, similar experiences, or at least have, wisdom to share.
Yeah, there's a lot of trials and tribulations of running a business.
Yeah.
You go through the ups and downs,
Yep.
of wearing all the different hats, and people don't know from the outside looking in what you have to go through.
Yeah.
Sure, I look cute right now, but I was a hot mess
Right.
before coming here.
Right.
And that's because I'm on phone calls at like 7 a.m. down to investor meetings in the evenings. You got to do a lot, but it does take a village.
Yeah.
So, find a mentor, lean on a really good team. My team is amazing.
Yeah.
I would not be able to do what we do here without them. They are all just badasses.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, I can honestly say that you are, one of the fiercest interviews I've had in a long time. And I am eternally grateful that you are so open about your challenges and your story. And I think it will touch a lot of people. So thank you for that.
Amy, I'm so honored. This is my first podcast
In your own space.
in my own space that I'm being interviewed
Isn't
for.
it great?
So I love being on this side. It's the first time I'm actually sitting on this side.
Yeah,
of
you're
the
really
table.
good at it. And your story, I think, will touch a lot of people. And your strength is inspiring. So
Thank you.
thank you so much. And your hat is cute.